U.S. Republican senator has unexpectedly become part of the Mitch McConnell health story after revealing that the missing Senate leader is not just a colleague, he is also his landlord. North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis disclosed that he has been renting a carriage house on McConnell's Washington property for months, placing him directly next door to the 84-year-old Kentucky senator as questions about McConnell's health continue to mount. Tillis made the revelation while speaking to reporters outside McConnell's D.C. home shortly after McConnell's office announced that he had been discharged from a rehabilitation facility and would continue recovering at home. When asked whether he was visiting McConnell, Tillis replied bluntly, "No, I live here." He explained that the carriage house is a separate building from McConnell's main residence and said he plans to stay there until he retires from the Senate at the end of his term. Tillis said he sold his own condo earlier this year and moved into the rental property in March. He also acknowledged that the unusual arrangement had made the intense media attention surrounding McConnell's condition feel somewhat surreal. Asked whether he had spoken to McConnell, Tillis offered only a brief update, saying he understands the senator is doing okay after leaving rehab and expressing hope that McConnell will eventually return to work. McConnell has publicly disclosed for years that he rents out a carriage house in Washington, and financial records show the property has generated tens of thousands of dollars in annual rental income. The revelation came as reporters gathered outside McConnell's home seeking information about his recovery. Several people, including the attending physician of Congress, were seen entering and leaving the residence, but none offered any public update on the senator's condition. McConnell's longtime aides also declined to answer questions about whether they would release video footage of the senator to calm speculation surrounding his health. Their silence has fueled further questions about how serious his condition may be. The mystery dates back when McConnell was reportedly found unconscious at his Washington home and required CPR. Since then, his office has released only a small number of photographs showing him seated with his wife, Elaine Chao. Notably, there has still been no public video of McConnell speaking and no recent image of him standing, nearly 2 months after his hospitalization. His prolonged absence has political consequences as well. Republicans are trying to advance key parts of Donald Trump's legislative agenda, and every Senate vote has become increasingly important. A missing McConnell vote could complicate efforts to pass future funding legislation and could also affect the confirmation prospects of acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal attorney. For now, Tillis's unexpected landlord revelation offers the closest glimpse yet into McConnell's private recovery, but it does little to answer the larger question dominating Capitol Hill: when, or if, the longtime Republican leader will return to the Senate. Tillis's surprising landlord revelation has now been followed by an even more striking admission from another Republican senator. Tommy Tuberville says he still has no real idea what condition Mitch McConnell is in. A Republican senator has publicly admitted he still does not know the truth about Mitch McConnell's condition nearly 2 months after the Kentucky senator disappeared from public view. Speaking to independent journalist Nicholas Balassi, Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville said McConnell is still in the hospital and undergoing rehabilitation after his June 14 medical emergency. Tuberville said McConnell lives next door to him, but when asked if that was all he knew, he replied, "I don't know anything." McConnell has not been seen publicly since suffering an apparent fall and cardiac arrest at his Washington home, where he reportedly required CPR. Tuberville also acknowledged that McConnell's continued absence could affect Republican efforts to advance Donald Trump's agenda in the Senate. He said some votes may need to be delayed until McConnell returns, explaining that Republicans would not move legislation forward unless they had the votes to pass it. One of the nominations potentially affected is acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal lawyer, whose confirmation could become more difficult without McConnell's vote. The uncertainty surrounding McConnell's health has intensified because his office has provided only limited public updates since the hospitalization. After growing calls for proof that the senator was recovering, McConnell's team released photographs on July 12th and July 27th showing him seated with his wife, former Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. The later statement said McConnell was working hard to get back to my full schedule in the Senate. However, no video of McConnell speaking has been released, and no new image has shown him standing, which has fueled further speculation about the seriousness of his condition. For now, even one of McConnell's Senate colleagues says he remains largely in the dark, leaving Washington with more questions than answers about the condition of the 84-year-old Republican leader. McConnell's absence isn't the only issue fueling discussion in Washington. His legacy is now facing renewed scrutiny as well. Mitch McConnell is still alive, but one columnist in his own hometown newspaper says he couldn't wait to write the senator's obituary. In a blistering opinion piece, the veteran Kentucky journalist described the longtime Republican lawmaker as a detestable figure and argued that history will remember him for two defining choices: his handling of Supreme Court nominations and his role in enabling Donald Trump. Here's why the extraordinary column is making national headlines. The opinion piece was written by Joseph Girth, a longtime columnist for the Louisville Courier-Journal, the largest newspaper in McConnell's home state of Kentucky. Girth explained that he deliberately chose to publish what he called a pre-obituary while McConnell is still alive. His reasoning? He said waiting until after the senator's death would inevitably bring criticism from people saying it was inappropriate to speak ill of someone who had just died. Instead, Girth decided to evaluate McConnell's political legacy now, and his assessment was scathing. The columnist described the 84-year-old senator as every bit the detestable figure that former U.S. President Richard Nixon became. According to Girth, McConnell's legacy will ultimately be defined by two major actions. The first, he argued, was McConnell's handling of Supreme Court nominations. Girth accused the longtime Senate Republican leader of using what he described as cynical and hypocritical tactics to reshape the nation's highest court. Girth pointed specifically to 2016, when McConnell refused to allow a Senate vote on then-President Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, following the death of Justice Antonin Scalia. At the time, McConnell argued that Americans should first decide the next president through the upcoming election. But 4 years later, after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died just weeks before the 2020 election, McConnell quickly moved to confirm President Donald Trump's nominee, Amy Coney Barrett. Barrett was confirmed only days before Americans went to the polls. Girth argued that those decisions permanently shifted the ideological balance of the Supreme Court. He claimed the move transformed the court into what he called a firmly conservative majority and damaged public confidence in the institution. The columnist also reflected on McConnell's earlier political life. He noted that as a young man, McConnell had supported civil rights efforts during the 1960s, but Girth argued that the senator later abandoned many of those positions. He even wrote that McConnell had shown more guts as a young man than he had as an old man. The second major issue Girth focused on was McConnell's relationship with Donald Trump. According to the columnist, McConnell had multiple opportunities to distance himself from Trump, but repeatedly chose not to. Girth highlighted the aftermath of the January 6th Capitol attack. Although McConnell publicly stated that Trump was practically and morally responsible for the events of January 6th, the senator ultimately voted against convicting Trump during his second impeachment trial. Girth argued that conviction could have prevented Trump from holding federal office again. The columnists also cited passages from the book The Price of Power, which reported that McConnell privately described Trump as stupid, ill-tempered, a despicable human being, and a narcissist. Yet, despite those reported private remarks, McConnell later endorsed Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. Girth argued that contradiction will define how history remembers the Kentucky senator. To be fair, the columnists acknowledged that McConnell achieved positive things during his lengthy Senate career. Among them, Girth credited him with helping expand Louisville's Jefferson Memorial Forest, but he argued those accomplishments would ultimately be overshadowed by McConnell's influence over the Supreme Court and his political decisions involving Trump. Girth concluded the piece by writing that he was relieved to have expressed his views while McConnell is still alive. The column arrives as renewed attention has focused on the senator's health. McConnell was hospitalized more than a month ago after suffering a fall and later developing pneumonia. Since then, questions have continued about his condition and his day-to-day Senate responsibilities. His office has released very few details regarding his workload or schedule. Staff members have largely declined to answer reporters' questions about the extent of McConnell's current Senate duties. McConnell himself has not publicly responded to Girth's opinion column. As an opinion piece, the article reflects the views of its author, not the newspaper's news reporting, but its unusually direct criticism and the decision to publish it before the senator's death has sparked widespread debate over how one of the most influential Republican leaders of the modern era will ultimately be remembered.